Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified. Here we take important articles from The Hindu and curate it as per the demand of UPSC Civil Services Examination. The topics for today's discussion are mentioned over your screen. So let's begin our session. The first topic for today's discussion is based on this news article which appeared on the page number 7 of The Hindu. The context of this article is that recently the University of Chicago has published the annual Air Quality Life Index for the year 2023. So this index shows poor state of air quality in the South Asian region, and it specifically focuses on particulate matter pollution, as the particulate pollution poses the world's greatest external risk to human health. So this topic is important for our GS paper 3 Environment and Biodiversity under the syllabus head Environmental Pollution and Degradation. Now proceeding in this topic, we will see what are the major highlights of this report. We will also see what is air pollution and what are the major pollutants, with a special focus to particulate matter. We will also see World Health Organization's Global Air Quality Guidelines and what are the India's initiative to curb air pollution. In the year 2021, we found this question, which was regarding the revised Global Air Quality Guidelines released by World Health Organization. And in the year 2013, we found this question, which was regarding discuss the strategies which may be adopted for river water pollution and management. A similar question can be asked regarding air pollution control and management. This topic is also important for our prelims perspective, as in the year 2016 we found this question, which was regarding the air quality index. And in the year 2022 we found this question, which was regarding the air quality guidelines of World Health Organization. Now let's begin our discussion. What is air pollution? So in simple words, air pollution means release of pollutants into the air. And these pollutants can be a complex mixture of solid particles, liquid droplets, and even gases. And these pollutants are detrimental to the human health and to the health of the planet. The major pollutants which cause air pollution are ozone, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, methane, and particulate matter. Particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10. The primary reason for release of these pollutants is vehicular exhaust, the burning of fossil fuels, the industrial processes, for example, the exhaust or the release from thermal plants, and construction waste. Though these pollutants are also released by some natural processes, but the anthropogenic processes are more dominant in increasing the share of these pollutants into the air. Now for our today's discussion, we will focus on particulate matter. Now before looking into particulate matter, let us in general understand what are the impacts of air pollution. So in the present times, air pollution is one of the biggest threat to human health and the major driver of climate change. Air pollution impacts human health. Prolonged exposure to air pollution can cause a decreased life expectancy due to severe diseases. So as per the estimates of World Health Organization, the exposure to air pollution causes 7 million premature deaths annually. It is due to the reduced lung function and respiratory infections. And the prolonged exposure can also cause cardiovascular diseases. Apart from this, a new research has shown that prenatal exposure to higher levels of air pollution can cause developmental delay in the children. And it can also cause various other psychological and behavioral issues in children. And we all know that air pollution is the major driver of global warming, ozone depletion causing acid rain. And these all are the induced factors for climate change. The impact of air pollution is also experienced by wildlife. It forces the wildlife species of that area to change their habitat by migration. Further, there are various economic costs related to air pollution. As per the World Air Quality Report 2022, the economic cost associated with air pollution in India alone is over $150 billion per year. And this economic costs are related to increased in healthcare expenditure, and because of which there is reduced level of productivity and also the economic cost of environmental damage. Now let's look into particulate matter. Particulate matter is not a single pollutant. Particulate matter is the mixture of tiny solid particles or liquid droplets suspended in air. So particulate matter suspended in air can be a mixture of viable and non-viable components. The viable component of particulate matter is composed of living organisms. So they may include bacteria, fungi, molds, and algae. In this mixture, there are also non-viable components. Non-viable components are those which are non-living or which are not able to reproduce. So this include smoke, dust, chemicals, solvents, and mist. Particulate matters are released by natural as well as anthropogenic processes. The natural processes for the release of particulate matters can be pollination, forest fire, or volcanic eruption. And anthropogenic processes are these processes which we discussed earlier. Now, based on the size of particulate matters, they are majorly divided into two categories. The first category is particulate matter 10. The second category is particulate matter 2.5. Particulate matter 10 are those particles which have a diameter of 10 micrometer or less than 10 micrometer. 1 micrometer is equals to 10 raised to power minus 6 meter. So in this image you can see this is a visual representation of a human hair, and these pairs of blue colors represent particulate matter 10. This is the comparison of their size with respect to a strand of a human hair. And particulate matter 2.5 comprises of the particles which are of the diameter 2.5 or less than 2.5 micrometers. Inhalation of both of these particulate matters is detrimental to human health. But there is a slight difference between particulate matter 10 and particulate matter 2.5. Particulate matter 10 are comparatively larger in size, and when inhaled they can deposit in the upper respiratory tract. But particulate matter 2.5, owing to their smaller size, can penetrate deeper into the respiratory system. So they can penetrate deeper into the lungs and even enter the bloodstream, and thus can impact all major organs. So now let's see WHO's Global Air Quality Guidelines. The guidelines by WHO are the set of evidence-based recommendations to limit the values for specific air pollutants. So these guidelines were first released by WHO in the year 1987. They were revised in the year 2005, and recently in the year 2021, WHO revised the Global Air Quality Guidelines. So these revised guidelines place more strict limits for 6 pollutant categories. These pollutant categories are particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and carbon monoxide. Though these guidelines are not legally binding, but these guidelines are formulated such that the nations of the world can formulate a strict local and national air quality standards. And based on the limits for these specific air pollutants, the nations can formulate their air quality standards to improve air quality and public health. So this table shows the revised air quality guidelines for the year 2021 and their comparison to the guidelines of 2005. If we talk about particulate matter 2.5, the annual upper limit of particulate matter 2.5 is 5 microgram per meter cube. It was 10 microgram per meter cube in the year 2005. Similarly, for particulate matter 10, the revised annual upper limit is 15 microgram per meter cube. And similarly, you can see revised limit for other pollutants. And based on these guidelines by WHO, we saw a question in prelims as well as in mains. Now, having seen the basics, let us see what are the findings of this report. The report says that South Asia is the center of an air pollution crisis. According to the Air Quality Life Index data from the year 2013 to 2021, the particulate pollution in the South Asian region has increased by 9.7%. The report says that the failure to meet WHO's guidelines on reducing particulate matter 2.5 to 5 microgram per meter cube would cut the global life expectancy by 2.3 years. So as per this report, the countries of South Asia, Bangladesh, India, Nepal and Pakistan are the most polluted countries in the world. Bangladesh is the most polluted country followed by India. The chart shows the annual PM 2.5 concentrations in the most polluted countries. You can see the higher level of particulate matter pollution in the South Asian countries, Bangladesh, Nepal, India and Pakistan. The chart 2 shows that among the top 5 threats to life expectancy in India, particulate pollution is the greatest threat to human health. And we already saw that the annual limit for particulate matter 2.5 pollution was 5 microgram per meter cube. but this limit of PM 2.5 pollution in India in the year 2021 was 58.7 microgram per meter cube. And this is an alarming level of particulate pollution, which exceeds the WHO guidelines by more than 10 times. And hence, if the WHO guidelines remain unmet, an average Indian resident is said to lose 5.3 years of life expectancy. The chart 3 shows the most polluted states in India and the potential life expectancy if the pollution level persists. So in the northern plains, the Union Territory of Delhi is most polluted, and Delhi is the most polluted city. Delhi is followed by Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Bihar, Punjab and other states. The study says that northern plains, which are home to around 39% of India's population, is the most polluted region. To support it, the chart 4 shows the annual average particulate matter 2.5 concentrations in India in the northern plains and all other regions. So in this chart we can see that the particulate matter pollution is linearly increasing in India, and the average particulate pollution of the northern plains is higher than that of the national average. Air pollution, which was once largely concentrated to the northern region of India, is also expanding to the other parts of the country. Now let's see what are India's initiative in order to deal with the issue of air pollution. The first such intervention is the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1981. This was the first concrete step by the Government of India to prevent, control and reduce air pollution. So this act provided for the establishment of pollution control boards, or it led to the establishment of Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Boards at the state levels. The act aimed to research about the causes and impact of air pollution and to spread awareness to stop air pollution. So these boards were given the powers to enforce the laws on controlling air pollution. National Clean Air Program was launched by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in the year 2019. It is a comprehensive program by the Union Government to tackle the problem of air pollution. The target is to bring 20 to 30% reduction in the level of particulate matter till the year 2024 as compared to their level in the year 2017. And to attain this target, 131 non-attainment cities have been identified all over India. Mostly these cities are concentrated in the Indo-Gangetic Plains. Non-attainment cities are those which do not meet the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Other such initiative by the Government of India is National Air Quality Index. National Air Quality Index is an initiative which was launched in the year 2014 under Swachh Bharat Mission. This index measures air quality based on 8 pollutants. The pollutant includes particulate matter 10, particulate matter 2.5, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, ammonia and lead. So this color-coded index have 6 categories of air quality. The air quality with air quality index between 0 to 50 is classified as good. Proceeding in this order, AQI of 401 to 500 is classified as severe. So based on this color coding or this AQI indicator, a common man can identify the air quality within his locality or surroundings. Another such initiative is National Ambient Air Quality Standards. These standards are notified by Central Pollution Control Board under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. It covers 12 pollutants. These pollutants are sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter 10 and 2.5, ozone, lead, ammonia, carbon monoxide, benzene, benzopyrene, arsenic and nickel. Another initiative is Air Quality Early Warning System. This initiative is basically for Delhi NCR region, which is impacted by pollution the most. So this early warning system alerts the citizens and policymakers about the possible severe air quality events in 7 to 10 days in advance. And based on these warnings, the policymakers can take appropriate actions. Another initiative is Swachh Vayu Sarvekshan. So this is an awareness initiative launched by the Union Government under the National Clean Air Program. Under this initiative, 131 cities are ranked based on their air quality. So based on these rankings, the cities can plan their actions to improve their air quality. Another such initiative by Government of India is Clean Air India Initiative. This was launched in the year 2018. This is a campaign to curb air pollution in Indian cities, and this will be done by promoting the partnership between Indian startups and Dutch companies. And together they will work on building solutions for cleaner air. Another such initiative is Commission for Air Quality Management. The Commission for Air Quality Management was set up as a statutory body to carry out air pollution management in Delhi and adjoining areas. The body was formed in the year 2021. Apart from this, other initiatives include the promotion of fuel standards. For it, India has adopted Bharat Stage Emission Standards. So these are the emission norms instituted by the Government of India to regulate the output of air pollutants emitted from engines in vehicles. So these standards are based on European regulations and were first launched in the year 2000. Now since the year 2020, India has adopted Bharat Stage 6 norms. So basically these emission standards aim to cut the emissions of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides and particulate matter from the vehicular exhaust. And in order to reduce the domestic air pollution, the government has launched Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana to expand the access to clean energy. And other alternatives of the government can be smog tower in Delhi NCR and the promotion of public transportation system or even scheme among others. Now despite all these initiatives, the air pollution level in the country is alarming. As already discussed, India stands second in the air pollution index. The need of the hour is a stronger mandate or to increase the mandate of National Clean Air Program. So presently under this initiative, the provisions are not legally binding. So due to which there are higher chances that this will turn out to be another advisory program. So in this regard, there is a need to provide enforceable mandate to state and local governments to enforce the provisions under this program and also for interministerial coordination. And also India needs to set up higher goals. So this can be seen from the comparative analysis of the guidelines of WHO versus India's National Ambient Air Quality Standards. The mandate for particulate matter 2.5 pollution is 5 microgram per meter cube as per WHO, but as per India's standards, it is 40 micrograms per meter cube. So there is a stark gap in the targets itself. So we can see that the current goals of India are more relaxed as compared to those of the guidelines of WHO. So India needs to make its standards more strict in line with the WHO guidelines. Finally, there is a need to adopt an airshed approach. So generally, air pollution is not a localized phenomena. Air pollution is spread to various states of India and it also crosses the international boundaries as the air of various countries in the South Asia is polluted. So there is a need to adopt an integrated approach which will comprise of localized solutions and also regional solutions. And this requires an effective policy formulation in this regard. And this also requires scientific data and monitoring. And for this, there is a need for higher resource allocation. Hence, India needs to develop an approach for integrated air quality monitoring by engaging the local stakeholders, the state level stakeholders, and if possible, the national level stakeholders of the countries within the region. The next topic for today's discussion is based on this article which appeared on page number 8 of The Hindu. The context of this article is that India's RTI Act, which has been commonly cited as the most comprehensive legislation in the world to assess public records. So in the recent years, there is a concern that the act is being diluted and this is shutting off a crucial means to hold the public officials accountable. So this topic of right to information is important for your GS paper 2, Polity and Governance. It is important under the subhead, Important Aspects of Governance, Transparency and Accountability. In the year 2020, we saw this question which was regarding the recent amendments to the Right to Information Act will have profound impact on the autonomy and independence of the Information Commission. So in this article, we will be discussing the basics of the Right to Information Act and we will be discussing the challenges to the Right to Information Act and the possible way forward. The Right to Information Act is an act of the Parliament which came effective from the year 2005. The act replaced the former Freedom of Information Act 2002. The right to information is implicit under Article 19 of Indian Constitution, which is right to freedom of speech and expression. Thus, right to information is an implied fundamental right under the Article 19, Section 1, subsection A. So what is the objective of Right to Information Act? The Act empowers any citizen of India to seek or request information from any public authority. Public authority in this Act means any government body which is established by or under the Constitution of India or any law, as well as any organization which is substantially financed by the government. Apart from this, the citizens can also seek information from private bodies which are substantially funded, controlled, or owned by the government. Hence, under the RTI Act, these are the rights of the citizens. The rights include to request any information held by a public authority, to obtain the copies of government documents, to inspect government works, documents and records, to take notes, extracts or certified copies of government documents or records, to take certified samples of government work, to seek information in electronic format, and to seek information without the need to provide reasons for the request. So these are the rights which are given to the citizens under the RTI Act. So these rights reflect that the primary objective of RTI Act is to empower the citizens and to promote transparency and accountability in government functioning. The Act also aims to combat corruption and to enhance democracy by making government activities and related information accessible to the public. It also helps citizens to obtain information from the government or state institutions, which is not readily available in the public domain. So by such kind of information, the citizens can identify any delays in public work, any shortfalls or leakages in welfare schemes. Hence, this can provide crucial insights into the government's decision making. So the information from RTI can hold the government or state institutions accountable, and which can lead to good governance. So let us see what is the information request process under RTI. For this, a written RTI application has to be submitted to the Public Information Officer. The Public Information Officer has to respond within 30 days, providing the requested information. In some important cases concerning threat to life or liberty, information must be provided within 48 hours. And while filing an RTI, there is no need to give any reason for seeking the information. The Public Information Officer can refuse to give information under some specific grounds. These grounds are under the Official Secret Act of 1923, national security, breach of privilege, or any information regarding defense or intelligence organizations. If an applicant is not satisfied by the information provided, they can file an appeal with an appellate authority. And this is to be done within 30 days. And further, an appeal can be made to the Information Commission. So these were some basic facts related to RTI Act, which will help you in understanding the implementation challenges of RTI. Now let's understand the implementation challenges of Right to Information Act. The first challenge is delay in appointments. Central Information Commission is a statutory body which was created under the RTI Act 2005, and it looks into the grievances and appeals concerning the offices of the central government. And likewise, State Information Commission looks into the grievances and appeals concerning to the offices of state government. But due to delay in the appointment to these commissions, results in significant delays in hearing appeals. So this undermines the very purpose of the Right to Information Act. Another issue is huge pendency of cases with the Central Information Commission and State Information Commission. It has two reasons. The first reason is the delay in appointment of these commissions, and because of which there is delay in hearing appeals. And another reason is every year in the country there are huge number of RTI applications filed, and the disposal of these cases require a significant amount of time and resources. Also, the process is complicated by the fact that the large number of RTI applications are frivolous. Hence, because of this pendency of cases, there is a delay in giving information to the genuine RTI applicants. The next issue is exemptions and limited applicability. So, under the Official Secrets Act 1923, the RTI Act has a limited applicability to certain entities like political parties, judiciary, or intelligence agency. And this has made the critics argue that such exemptions limit the act and scope of RTI and hence its effectiveness. But however, sometimes these exemptions can be misused to deny any crucial information. Another issue is non-disclosure of information voluntarily. There have been certain times when the information by the public authorities is not disclosed voluntarily. This is either because by the misuse of these exemptions and also because due to a lack of accountability by these public authorities. And this is also one of the challenges of the RTI Act, which leads to an increased number of RTI appeals or applications. And adding to the complexity, there is lack of penalties for appellate authorities. While the RTI Act specifies the time limit to get the information. However, there are no penalties for the public authorities or for the appellate authorities in case they fail to meet this deadline. So this is also one of the reasons for non-disclosure of information voluntarily. Another issue is opaque and arbitrary appointment process. There have been allegations of lack of transparency and objectivity in the appointment process of these officials. And also, the RTI Act does not provide any clear qualification regarding the appointment of public information officer. Further, an important issue regarding the dilution of RTI Act is an amendment to the service conditions of these officials through the RTI amendment in the year 2019. There was an amendment to the Right to Information Act in the year 2019. Prior to the amendment, the position of Chief Information Commissioner and Information Commissioners was equivalent to that of the Chief Election Commissioner or to that of a Supreme Court judge, as they had a fixed term of 5 years. Also, the salary paid to the Chief Information Commissioner was equivalent to the salary paid to Chief Election Commissioner, and the salary paid to the Information Commissioner was equivalent to the salary paid to Election Commissioners. However, by the amendment of 2019, these provisions were removed, and now the central government or state government would notify the term of office for Chief Information Commissioner and Information Commissioners. Also, the salary, allowances and the term of office of the central and state CIC and IC will be fixed by the central government. So, this amendment to the service condition undermines the independence of central and state Chief Information Commissioner and Information Commissioners. Further, RTI Act lacks adequate enforcement powers to the Information Commissioners, and this lack of enforcement powers weakens the effectiveness of RTI Act. Another important issue is amendment proposed by the Digital Personal and Data Protection Bill of 2022. The central government has proposed the Digital Personal and Data Protection Bill. So this bill proposes an amendment to the RTI Act, and this amendment will exempt all personal information from disclosure. Presently, there is no blanket ban on disclosure of personal information through the RTI Act. It is only exempted under certain circumstances. But through the provisions of Digital Personal and Data Protection Bill, the public officials can evade accountability by putting a blanket ban on disclosure of personal information. Another issue is in the online application of RTI. Though there is a provision to submit the RTI applications online, but the digital spaces, websites or platforms of certain government bodies are not functional, or these government bodies do not have a functional online portal, and because of which there are issues in filing an online RTI. And lastly, under the RTI Act, there are no provisions for the protection of whistleblowers, and which can deter people to expose corruption and malpractices. So let's see the possible way forward. So the first thing is protection should be provided to the RTI activist. The protection should be extended to the RTI activist under the Whistleblower Protection Act. in order to encourage more people to seek information fearlessly. The next measure can be by training the public information officers to handle RTI requests and provide accurate information in a timely manner. Another important measure is by empowering the Chief Information Commissioner to penalize government offices and departments in the case of non-disclosure of information voluntarily. The Chief Information Commissioner and State Information Commissioners should be granted autonomy to appoint their own staff. This will ensure that competent and dedicated personnel are selected to handle RTI related matters. Finally, there should be a time-bound delivery and grievance redressal mechanism to set accountability to public offices and office holders. The final topic for today's discussion is a prelims pointer. It is inspired by this news article which appeared on the page number 1 of The Hindu. The context of this article is that the central government has decided to call for a special session of parliament, and this is being done to introduce One Nation, One Election bill. So this special session of the parliament will be held from September 18 to September 22. And this parliamentary session will not have any question hour or private members' business. So this topic is important for our GS paper 2, Polity and Governance, under the syllabus head Parliamentary Procedures. India does not have a fixed parliamentary calendar. However, in a year, the Indian Parliament meets for 3 sessions. So these sessions are budget session, generally in the month of February to May, monsoon session, generally in the month of July to August, winter session, generally in the month of November to December. So as per the Article 85 of Indian Constitution, there should not be a more than 6-month gap between any 2 parliamentary sessions. So who determines parliamentary sessions? It is the government through the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs decides that when a parliament will meet, including the date of parliamentary sessions and its duration. Now let's see what is a special session of parliament. The term special session is not mentioned in Indian Constitution. However, government can sometimes convey a special session of parliament, like for the commemoration of parliamentary or any national milestone. Presently, this special session of parliament has been decided for the introduction of One Nation, One Election bill. So in such sessions, the presiding officers can direct that the proceedings of their respective houses would be limited, and some parliamentary devices like question hour would not be available to member of parliaments during such session. However, there is an Article 352 in Indian Constitution that is regarding the proclamation of emergency, and it refers to a special sitting of the House. And this part was added through 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. The purpose was to safeguard the power of proclaiming emergency in the country. So don't confuse this special sitting of the House with a special session. For more information to the special session of Parliament, you can refer to the DNS dated 1st September 2023. The news article titled Measuring Hunger Across States appeared on the page number 7 of The Hindu. This article is about significant level of food insecurity, hunger and child malnutrition present in India. A detailed analysis on this topic was presented on 21st August 2023. So you can refer to this DNS video to understand this topic. In the page number 8 of Hindu, there is a topic, what is the debate around One Nation, One Election? This topic was also recently covered on 1st September 2023. So you can see this DNS video to understand the nuances of this topic. So that's all for today. Thank you.